Welcome to today's episode of Ibosa. We've got the pleasure to welcome Mrs. Doris Johnston with us today.
I'm Doris Johnston, and thank you for inviting me to share with you some of my contribution towards tourism when I came here from East Africa.
So when you came to Seychelles, the international airport had not really been officially opened. In 1971, you joined BOAC, and then the international airport was officially opened in 1972.
Yeah, the international airport at Point Larry was in the construction stage, you know, and so the international carriers, BOAC to start with, were ready once the airport opened to start providing some means of introducing tourism, bringing tourism into Seychelles.
And for those that do not know, what does BOAC stand for?
British Overseas Airways Corporation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it was an airline.
Yeah. It
was operating in Seychelles.
Correct.
That then became British Airways.
It became British Airways because there was an amalgamation of BEA, which was the European Airways, and BOAC, so it just became BA.
So you were living in Uganda before coming back to Seychelles. How did you join BOAC in Seychelles?
When I was with East African Airways, we were having a very troublesome time in Uganda. Amin had just taken over, and it was a terrible time. So it was fortunate that there was an advert in the local newspaper, I think Uganda Times or East African Standard, I can't remember, asking anyone who had Seychelles origins, who an airline experience, to apply, because they were looking for staff to come to Seychelles.
Okay.
So I applied, and I was given an interview in Nairobi. The boss, British Airways boss, came over from UK, and the person who was going to be my boss interviewed me as well, and I got the job.
How was airline operations back then when you joined BOAC?
The airline operation back then was just small, between East Kenya, Mombasa particularly, and Seychelles, but there were smaller operators like Wilkin Air, who were more like charter companies.
What about the daily runnings of the office, the passenger list? How were all of these done?
Well, first of all, we didn't have an office to start with, and so our office eventually was my mum's restaurant, the Rainbow, in a day, or it was above, just near the Pirates Arms, and so we would meet there, and that was our office to start with. Eventually, we got an office in the Pirates Arms, downstairs in the Pirates Arms.
All right.
In fact, my mother made the curtains, I remember, for that office. So we had to recruit staff and interview staff. So we had to do that in order to man the office.
Okay.
And had to learn ticketing, and all the ticketing in those days was done by hand. Nothing was computerized. Handwritten as well. I went to London on a course to do ticketing course and fares, because fares were not computerized. You had to work them out by mileage.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so that all that training had to be taken care of. The aircraft came in and didn't stay overnight. It just came in the morning
and left in the
evening.
Okay.
Yeah. And it would be a back-to-back thing. They would drop people off and pick the people up to take them on after the holiday.
So, then after BOAC, what are some of the other tourism companies you've worked for?
And then I got a job with Masons, actually.
Okay.
After that, yeah.
And was that you're also where you retired?
It was also where I retired.
Okay.
Yeah.
What were some of the interesting
I was
moments? Sorry.
a lot of interesting moments in meeting VIPs, getting to know the governor here, for instance, who appointed me as lady in waiting for the Duchess of Gloucester.
Oh, wow.
For independence, when independence came.
Okay.
And
And the Rainbow Restaurant you mentioned was run by your
mom.
mom?
Things you used to
Okay.
get.
And who were they? What was their surname?
Oh, Dan and Amy Pyatt.
Okay, so the
The
Pyatt
niece,
family.
yeah, Pyatt.
So you married Johnston afterwards. Okay.
I was already married when I came here. Yeah.
All right. So
Um,
it looks like the family has kind of started in tourism and you continued, and your kids also, some of them continued in that.
Debbie did. She was with the helicopter company for a bit. So yeah, there was a connection along the way, for that.
So how is tourism back then different from now?
I think back then is preferable to now. We've got two 5-star orientated or 4-star oriented. And there are some tourists that want that, but I think there's a lot of other tourists who would prefer a simpler holiday, meeting local people, like in your local guest houses, or where even their own bed and breakfast, if they wanted a special meal, I know they would provide. We'll do you a nice Creole dinner if they were on BB. So it was much more for the tourists. They were included more by the people who ran their. And then the meeting and greeting at the time was more colorful, more joyful, because the buses were all decorated.
Okay.
When they
Was it buses or was it camion?
Camion.
Okay.
Yeah, because there was they decided to get rid of the camions and bring buses. And they were nice because they had little, they had names.
Okay.
The buses, the camions.
Do you still remember the names?
There was the big boy, little boy. I don't remember all the names, but they all had their names.
Okay.
And they had their cassette player in there, and they'd play music.
Were the hotels during that early time opening of the airport, were all of them Seychellois owned?
Not all, but most were. Later on, they became. But the main hotels, like the early ones, Hotel de Seychelles, was he was English, but he was a Seychellois.
Practically Seychellois.
Jerry Legrand, Mimi Lablache. I don't know too much about the Pioneer hotels at the time, but there were some little guest houses, and the thing about it was that they were close to the tourists, those people who ran these little guest houses. Always wanting to please them. Don't worry if you don't have to eat out. If you just tell us the day before, we'll prepare a meal for you in the evening. We'll give you a nice Creole dinner, and sometimes even the one of the partners in the hotel, if he had a transport, he might take them out for a little drive somewhere, or then the fishing guys used to come take them for fishing as well. At that time, the Masons had part of the thing, and so they used to do trips to Surf Island as well. And then also night entertainment. They did sunset cruises, and what they would do, you would meet the boat, and you'd have cocktails and snacks. They'd go to the Northeast Point, do a tour around, and then they'd go to surf. And when you arrived at Surf, off the beach, there would be a bonfire, and there'd be mucha, there'd be drums going.
Oh, wow.
And lighting. They'd put the paper bags, with lamps in all the way along to make it nice. and then
And a
they would
mucha.
do bonfires, and then if the tourists came, they would also join in, of course, with it. You know, when I was selling when I was with Masons, we were selling tours, trying to sell tours, and it would be raining. You had to try and sell the tours.
Okay, so that's actually an interesting point. What did you recommend to the visitors
Well,
during rainy
we had
days?
day trips. We had day trips that would take them to the marine park, and then maybe a picnic lunch or something at or on the boat
Okay.
at St. Anne or somewhere like that.
Even if it's raining.
Even if, but I used to. Oh, and then they used to go to where Brendan Grimshaw there on surf. That little
On
island.
Round Island.
Round, yeah.
Okay.
On Round. They would go.
And Brendan was still around.
Yeah, he
back
had the
then.
Jolly Roger
Yes.
then at the time.
Yeah. Obviously, there's technology, life has evolved, but are there some elements of how tourism used to be back then that you think we could still implement or bring back?
What they need to do is actually bring some of the local, try and bring local culture to the hotels. The dancing, the singing, the musicians, the artists. They need to bring some local people in to share their talent with the tourists, you know. And it's so nice when they've had groups that have come in the past. They've come to the hotels and danced. I remember at Fisherman's Cove they used to do that.
Do a little bit of how to dance the Kamtule.
Yeah, and then drag the tourist onto the floor and say, "Come dance," and then make them happy.
What about the Camino? Do you think visitors would still enjoy that, with or without aircon?
I think they would enjoy it because it's something different. It's local. You can put them in a bus that's air conditioning, but what's the difference of putting a tourist in a bus here? You don't see brochures really of big 5-star hotels. You see little touched places on the beach and that. So people, I think sometimes there's a mismarketing strategy. Yeah, they should market more the simple things and the welcoming feeling that people will get when they come here. But then in town there was what they called home industries. It was near Barclays, I think, opposite the post office area there.
Okay.
There was a home industries there, and all these
Artisans.
crafts that were done were all local.
Okay.
They didn't bring it in from Thailand or China or whatever. They were local. They did raffia bags and straw hats and slippers that they used to sew and embroider.
For us younger generations, what would be your advice to us, considering we live on a small island state and tourism is one of our pillars of the economy? With your years of experience, with everything you've observed, what would you say to us younger generations coming up?
I think I would say to all the younger people here, everybody in fact, because people here have got to take more responsibility for their environment. They have to be proud of their country. They have to. It doesn't take much effort if you're going to picnic on the beach to take a bag and put your rubbish in and dump it somewhere. No, you know, be proud of of the beauty of your country. Be friendly. Be caring about your environment, your country. Love it, you know, and share it with the tourists as well, so that when they go away, they have a good impression that the people of Seychelles are friendly and caring, and we would go back. Don't come back.
So as we would say in Creole, Ibosa.
Ibosa.
Thank you, Doris. It's been a pleasure knowing a bit about you, your history in airport and also tourism. And thank you so much for the advice you've given us.
Thank you for having me here and letting me share with you some of my experiences.
Okay.
It's been a pleasure. Ali.
Ibosa.
No.